With a voice like silk and venom, Queen Lami commanded the mirror to reveal the truth she sought. The dim glow of torches flickered against the ornate chamber walls, casting eerie shadows as she spoke. "Show me those who dare to challenge my supremacy," she hissed, her long nails drumming impatiently against the gilded frame of the mirror. The warriors of Akime dared not venture into their land, as stories had it that the giant, once upon a time, in the mystical kingdom of Akime, shrouded in fear and darkness, there reigned the female king of unparalleled power and dread. She was known as King Lami, a name that sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest souls. King Lami held the entire village under her oppressive thumb, ruling with an iron fist and a heart of darkness. The scent of incense and burning herbs often lingered in the air, masking the underlying aura of dread. For years, she had sat upon her throne, her dominion unchallenged, her cruelty unmatched. No one dared to question her authority, for the punishment was swift and merciless. Stories had it that she ascended the throne through treachery and sorcery and had since maintained her dominance through a gruesome ritual that imbued her with unimaginable powers. It was said that Queen Lami derived her powers from the most horrifying of sources, the severed manhoods of those who dared to defy her. Legend whispered of dark rituals performed under the pale light of the full moon, where she consumed the essence of her victims to fill her insatiable thirst for power. The very ground beneath the palace was rumored to be soaked with the blood of countless fallen men, their spirits forever trapped within its cursed walls. You may want to ask, are there men in the kingdom of Akime? No free man lives in Akime. The king's warriors roamed the lands and forests like wolves in search of men, capturing any unfortunate soul who crossed their path. These men were then forced into a life of servitude, their bodies used as vessels for the queen's twisted desires. Their ultimate task was to impregnate the women of Akime, for Queen Lami held a deep-seated hatred for the male gender. And so, the men were sent out like pawns on a massive chessboard, their every move dictated by the whims of their merciless ruler. The echoes of their sorrowful cries sometimes reached the heavens, but mercy was never granted. But the horror did not end there. For when a woman became pregnant, she was taken to the queen's palace, where she would be kept under close surveillance until she gave birth. If the child born was a girl, she would be permitted to leave and eventually join the ranks of Akime's oppressed society. But if fate decreed that a male child enter the world, the queen's decree was swift and merciless. For in her twisted mind, she saw male children as threats to her power and symbols of rebellion. Thus, any woman who bore a son faced a cruel fate. Her child would be ripped from her arms and eliminated. The wails of grieving mothers echoed through the halls of the palace, a mournful melody that never ceased. In the depths of her opulent palace, Queen Lami stood before the ancient mirror that held the key to her dominion. The room was dimly lit by the soft glow of enchanted candles, their flames dancing like spirits in the gloom. With a flicker of anticipation in her eyes, she uttered the incantation that would reveal the truth she sought. "Mirror, mirror, show me if anyone is trying to take over my supremacy," she commanded, her voice dripping with venomous certainty. The very air in the chamber seemed to still, awaiting the mirror's response. In a moment, the mirror shimmered and shifted, casting forth an image that sent a shiver down Queen Lami's spine, a reflection of her own fierce visage, unyielding and undiminished, by the passage of time. A twisted smile spread across Queen Lami's lips as she beheld the sight before her, a laugh of triumph echoing through the chamber like the tolling of a bell. The sound carried through the palace, sending a renewed wave of dread through the hearts of those who served her. For in that fleeting glimpse, she saw not only her own image, but the undeniable proof of her enduring power. With a sense of satisfaction, Queen Lami turned away from the mirror, her confidence renewed and her grip on the throne unshakable. For as long as the mirror reflected her forceful presence, she knew that her supremacy remained unchallenged and that no one dared to defy the might of the wicked Queen of Akime. Stay tuned as the main story is about to unfold. Don't forget to like and subscribe. One day, a woman named Zara discovered that she was pregnant. She had been pregnant before, but her baby was eliminated as it was a male child. So she decided to hide her pregnancy for fear of being taken to the queen's palace. With each passing day, Zara's belly swelled with new life. A secret she guarded with fierce determination. She moved with caution, shrouding herself in loose garments, avoiding the prying eyes of the queen's watchful guards. But as her time drew near, the walls of the village seemed to close in around her, suffocating her with fear and uncertainty. Whispers of Zara's pregnancy began to spread like wildfire through the village. She knew that her time was running out. Memories of her previous pregnancy haunted her, the pain of losing her precious son to the queen's merciless decree still fresh in her mind. Each night she lay awake, whispering silent prayers to the spirits of the land, hoping that fate would grant her a miracle this time. Determined not to suffer the same fate again, she resolved to escape the clutches of Queen Lami and her dreaded palace. She knew that she could not bring her child into a world ruled by such darkness, where innocence was snuffed out before it ever had a chance to bloom. But would she be able to escape? Under the cover of night, with only the moon as her witness, Zara stole away from the village, her heart pounding in her chest. With each step she took towards freedom, she knew that her journey would be perilous, fraught with danger at every turn. But she refused to let fear dictate her fate any longer. The cool night air carried the distant sounds of the palace guards, their torches flickering like fireflies against the darkened landscape. Through the dense forest and treacherous mountains, Zara pressed on, her determination unwavering. Even as exhaustion threatened to claim her, she dared not rest, not until she had crossed the border and left the kingdom of Akime far behind. But Queen Lami's reach was long, and her spies were everywhere. As Zara ventured deeper into the unknown, she could feel the queen's gaze upon her, a cold presence that sent shivers down her spine. The rustling of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl made her startle, her nerves fraying with each passing hour. With each passing day, the fear grew stronger, threatening to consume her whole. Still, she pressed on, driven by the fierce love burning within her heart. For she knew that her child deserved a chance at life, free from the tyranny that had plagued her homeland for far too long. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of hardship and struggle, Zara reached the border of Akime. With tears of relief streaming down her face, she stepped across the threshold into a new world, one filled with hope and possibility, the land of giants. The air was different here, crisp and heavy, with the scent of unfamiliar flora. She took a deep breath, savoring the first moment of true freedom she had ever known. But even as she breathed in the sweet scent of freedom, she knew that her journey was far from over, for Queen Lami's reign still cast a dark shadow over the land of Akime, and there were others like her who longed to see it toppled. Back in Akime, as Queen Lami peered into the depths of her dark mirror, her eyes blazed with a hunger for power. She awaited the revelation of the kingdom's secrets. With each incantation and twisted ritual, she renewed her hold over the ancient magic that bound her to the mirror's sinister gaze. At first, the mirror remained still, its surface as still as death itself. But as Queen Lami's power surged forth, fueled by the essence of the men whose lives she had consumed, the mirror began to stir, its surface rippling with malevolent energy. Shadows danced across the chamber walls as the flames of nearby torches flickered violently, responding to the queen's growing wrath. With a voice like silk and venom, Queen Lami commanded the mirror. Queen Lami commanded the mirror to reveal the truth she sought. Show me those who dare to challenge my supremacy. And, as if in response to her dark desires, the mirror shimmered and shifted, casting forth images of her subjects in the twisted tableau of fear and subservience. But, amidst the sea of familiar faces, one figure stood out against the darkness, a woman heavy with child, concealed within the depths of the forest. A surge of rage and indignation coursed through Queen Lami's veins as she beheld the sight before her. How dare this mere mortal defy her will, flaunting her disobedience in the very heart of her kingdom? With a flick of her wrist, she summoned her most loyal enforcers, commanding them to hunt down the interloper and bring her to justice. The scent of burning herbs filled the chamber as she strengthened her spell, ensuring her soldiers would find no rest until their mission was complete. And so Queen Lami's minions set forth into the forest, their hearts consumed by a fervent zeal to uphold their queen's twisted reign. Through the tangled underbrush and shadowed glades, they pressed on, their footsteps echoing as they closed in on their footsteps echoing as they closed in on their unsuspecting prey. The land of the giants is one dreaded by the warriors of Akime. Though the giants are mostly men, the warriors of Akime dare not venture into their land, as stories had it that the giants eat people, especially their enemies. Zara was happy that she had left the shores of Akime. She would rather be eaten by the giants than have her child killed by the evil queen. Just then, she heard huge footsteps and quickly hid herself inside a nearby cave. As Zara cowered within the safety of the cave, the earth beneath her feet trembled with each thunderous footstep. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mix of fear and anticipation, as she braced her fear and anticipation as she braced herself with bated breath. The damp walls of the cave were cold against her skin, and the faint trickle of water echoed eerily in the darkness. She prayed that whatever approached would pass by without noticing her presence, for she knew all too well the dangers that lurked beyond the safety of her hiding place. In that moment, labor came upon her with merciless swiftness, each contraction a searing reminder of the peril that surrounded her. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she clutched at the uneven ground, her fingers curling around the rough texture of the stone. The footsteps drew nearer, their thunderous rhythm echoing through the depths of the cave like the beating of a war drum. Zara knew that she must summon every ounce of strength and courage within her to face the trials that lay ahead. With a final surge of strength, Zara pushed, her body straining against the overwhelming force of nature as she fought to bring her child into the world. The cave walls seemed to close in around her, trapping her within an ancient, sacred moment of birth and survival, and in that moment, she let out a loud cry of pain. The story of Zara teaches us a powerful lesson about courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bond of a mother's love. No matter how dark and oppressive the world may seem, those who fight for freedom and justice will always find a way forward. Fear and tyranny may chase us, but determination and hope will always light the path to a better future. Thank you for watching my channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more thrilling and inspiring stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. What would you do if you saw your mother turning into a bird in the middle of every night? Lami was a curious and bright 14-year-old girl with short curly hair. She often played outside at home under the palm trees, running barefoot in the soft and warm soil, listening to the laughter of other village children. In the evening, she would help her mother prepare dinner, while her father shared stories of the day's work in the field. "Papa, how big are the yam to us this year?" Lami would ask eagerly as they sat on the floor to eat their evening meal. Mr. Damie would smile warmly. "Ha, Lami, oh my daughter, they are as big as your head. This season is going to be bountiful." Mama Adana chuckled softly. "Don't let your father fill your head with stories," she teased. "The yams are healthy but not that big." Lami loved this moment, the laughter, the warmth of family. She had always admired how her parents worked hard and cared deeply for each other. The small clay lamps around the room flickered, adding a golden glow to their home, and the cool evening breeze wafted through the windows, carrying with it the scent of jasmine. But all of that was about to change. One night, something strange happened. Lami had woken up from a bad dream, thirsty and needing a drink of water. She quietly slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her parents, who were in the next room. As she tiptoed past the door, she noticed something strange. The door was slightly open, and she could see her mother standing by the window. At first, Lami was about to call out to her, but then she froze. Something wasn't right. In the moonlight, she saw her mother changing. Mama Edana's shape seemed to stretch unnaturally, her body transforming into something monstrous. Can you take a guess of what? A huge bird with black feathers, glowing red eyes, and sharp claws. The transformation was terrifying, and Lami's heart pounded in her chest. She watched in disbelief as the giant bird flapped its wings and flew out the window, disappearing into the dark night. Imagine a 14-year-old girl seeing such a disturbing image. Lami stood there trembling. Was this real? Was her mother a witch? She had heard stories in the village about witches who turned into birds at night, but she never imagined it could be true, let alone happen in her own family. The soft chirping of crickets outside now sounded eerie, and the shadows in the room felt alive. For days, Lami kept what she saw to herself. She couldn't understand what was happening and was too scared to talk to anyone. Every night she would lie awake, pretending to sleep, waiting to sleep, waiting to see, or waiting to see if her mother would change again. And every night, like clockwork, Mama Adana would leave the house in bird form. During the day, everything seemed normal. Mama Adana was her usual self, gentle, loving, and kind. She hummed while cooking and told Lami stories of her own childhood. Papa Dami continued to work hard in the field, unaware of the dark secret of his wife. But Lami's heart was heavy with fear. One afternoon, Lami was helping her mother fetch water from the village stream. The sunlight danced on the surface of the water, and the rustling of leaves filled the air. She couldn't hold it in any longer. "Mama," Lami began hesitantly, her voice shaking. "Do you ever have, strange dreams?" Mama Adana smiled down at her daughter. "Dreams? Oh, Lami, everyone has dreams." "Why do you ask?" Lami, unsure of how to continue, said, "What if someone saw something strange at night? Like, someone turning into a bird?" Mama Adana's hand froze for just a moment, but she quickly resumed pouring water into the clay pot. Her face remained calm, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. "Lami, there are many strange things in this world, but not all of them are real. You should not worry about such things." Lami nodded slowly, but the unease in her stomach only grew further. Weeks passed, and Lami's fear of her mother deepened. Then one day, tragedy struck. Papa Dami was out working in the field when he suddenly collapsed. Villagers rushed to help him, but when they carried him home, he was weak, coughing, and barely able to speak. Mama Adana stayed by his side, her face full of worry. Lami was heartbroken. She sat outside the house, listening to whispers of the villagers. The air was thick with tension, and the scent of burning firewood from nearby kitchens felt heavier than usual. "Do you think it is a curse?" one woman asked quietly. "There have been rumors of strange things happening at night in this village." Another woman said, "No." Another shook her head. "Papa Dami is a good man. This could just be illness." Lami's mind raced. Could her mother's secret be the cause of her father's illness? The thought terrified her. As days went by, Papa Dami's condition worsened. Mama Adana tried everything: herbs, prayers, and visits to the village healer, but nothing worked. The house was quiet, except for the occasional murmur of concerned neighbors. One night, as Lami sat by her father's bed, she made a decision. She couldn't stay silent anymore. The next morning, after helping her mother with household chores, Lami had to speak with her in private. Mama Adana looked at her with concern, noticing how serious her daughter seemed. "Mama," she said, her voice trembling, "I know your secret." Her mother's face went pale. "What do you mean, Lami?" "I have seen you at night. I have seen you turn into a bird and fly away." Lami's voice cracked. "Papa is sick because of it, isn't he?" Her mother was silent for a long time. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized that her daughter had discovered the truth. She knelt down in front of Lami, her hands trembling. "Lami, my daughter, it's not what you think," she whispered, her voice breaking. I never wanted this. I inherited this curse from my mother after she passed away. I never wanted to hurt anyone, especially not your father." Lami took a step back, her eyes wide with shock. "A curse. A curse. Yes," her mother said, tears filling her eyes. "It is a terrible burden that was passed down to me, just as it was passed down to my mother before me. But I have never used it to harm anyone, Lami. I would never hurt your father or you. I leave at night so that I don't bring harm to anyone." Lami's heart ached as she saw the pain in her mother's face. She wanted to believe her, but the fear that had been growing inside her for weeks was strong. The faint sound of crickets outside the window filled the silence, adding to the unease in the room. "But Papa is so sick," Lami whispered. "How can you say it is not because of you?" Mama Adana shook her head, her voice thick with emotion. "I swear to you, my daughter, I had nothing to do with your father's illness. It is a sickness of the body, not of the spirit. You must believe me." Lami stood there, torn between fear and the love she had always had for her mother. Her mind was racing, her heart was pounding. Could it be true? Was her mother really cursed and not evil? She didn't know what to think. A gust of wind swept through the open window, causing the curtains to flutter. Lami could not keep the secret any longer. One evening, as her father's condition worsened, she decided to speak up. Her family needed to know the truth. Gathering her courage, she called her aunts, uncles, and cousins to their home. The family gathered in the small living room, their faces filled with concern. Papa Dami lay on his mat. He was weak and feverish, barely able to speak. Lami stood in the center of the room, a small frame shaken with fear and determination. She took a deep breath, glancing at the flickering lantern casting shadows on the walls. "Do you think a mother would allow her to reveal the secret? Let's watch out." Dami finally spoke. "My mother is not who you think she is," she began, her voice trembling. "She's been hiding something from all of us. At night, she turns into a big bird." Gasps filled the room. The family members looked at each other. They were shocked and confused. Mama Adana lowered her head. Tears were streaming down her face. She couldn't deny it any longer. One of Lami's hands trembled. "She's been hiding something from all of us. At night, she turns into a big bird." Gasps filled the room. The family members looked at each other. They were shocked and confused. Mama Adana lowered her head, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't deny it any longer. The soft rustling of leaves outside seemed to echo the tension in the room. One of Lami's hands trembled as Amaka stepped forward. "Is this true? Have you been hiding this from us?" Mama Adana nodded slowly, unable to meet her sister's eyes. "Yes, it is true, but it is not something I chose. It is a curse that was passed down from my mother. I have been trying to control it, to keep it from hurting anyone, but I would never harm a child. I would never harm any of you." The room fell into a heavy silence as the family tried to process what they had just heard. Some of the relatives exchanged worried glances, while others murmured under their breath. A distant owl hooted, breaking the stillness of the night. "Do you think the family is going to expose her to the public? Let's watch out." Suddenly, Lami's uncle, Amaka, who was known for his wisdom and calm nature, spoke up. "If this curse is not something you chose, then there must be a way to break it." Mama Adana wiped her tears and nodded. "I have tried to find a way, but I don't know how. I am scared, Amaka. I don't want to pass this curse to Lami one day." Uncle Amaka stroked his chin thoughtfully. "I know someone who might be able to help, a wise elder in the village. He understands the old ways and the secrets of the spirit world. Perhaps he can free you from this burden." The next morning, Amaka led Mama Adana to the outskirts of the village, where the wise elder lived. The old man sat outside his hut quietly, tending to his garden when they arrived. Birds chirped softly in the background, and the smell of herbs wafted through the air. "Elder, we need your help," Uncle Amaka said respectfully, bowing slightly. My sister has been carrying a heavy burden for many years. She has inherited a curse, and it is tearing our family apart. The elder looked up, his eyes filled with understanding. I have heard whispers in the wind about this, he said in a deep, soothing voice. The spirit of your mother lingers. It is she who passed this curse to you. But do not fear, the spirit does not wish for you to suffer. There is a way to lift this curse. Mama Adana stepped forward, her voice trembling. Elder, please, I will do anything to be free from this curse. I want to protect my family, especially my daughter. I don't want this burden to fall on her. The elder nodded. The curse can be broken, but it will require a cleansing ritual at the sacred river under the full moon. We must call upon the spirit of your mother and ask for her forgiveness and her blessing to release you. On the night of the full moon, Mama Adana and Uncle Amaka gathered at the riverbank along with the elder. The villagers, curious and concerned, had come to witness the ritual. The air was cool, and the gentle sound of crickets filled the night. The moon was high in the sky, casting a silvery glow on the water. The sound of the river rushed down the rocks. Elder Amaka began the ritual by lighting a small fire and placing sacred herbs into the flames. He chanted softly, calling upon the ancestors and the spirits of Mama Adana's mother. Adana watched in fear as the fire flickered and danced, the smoke rising into the night sky. The scent of burning herbs was strong, mingling with the earthy smell of the riverbank. Mama, Elder Amaka said, his voice calm but powerful, step into the river. With trembling legs, Mama Adana waded into the cold water. As the water reached her waist, she closed her eyes, her heart pounding. Elder Amaka continued his chant, his voice growing louder as the villagers stood in silence, watching. Suddenly, the winds began to pick up, swirling around them. The river seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, and then out of the water, a glowing figure appeared. It was the spirit of Mama Adana's mother. Her face was serene but sad. My daughter, the spirit said softly, her voice like the wind. I have watched over you, and I have seen your suffering. I am sorry for the burden I have placed upon you. Tears streamed down Mama Adana's face as she looked at the glowing figure of her mother. Mama, I never wanted this. Please release me from this curse. The spirit smiled gently. You are free now, my child. The curse is lifted. As the spirit spoke, the glowing light around Mama Adana began to fade. The wind died down and the water became still. Mama Adana opened her eyes, feeling a weight lifted from her shoulders. She was free. In the days following the ritual, peace returned to Adana's family. Papa Dami, although still weak, began to recover slowly, his illness having been a natural one after all. The village healer provided him with the right herbs, and with time, he regained his strength. Lami and her mother grew closer than ever. Lami no longer feared her mother. In fact, she admired her more for her strength, for carrying such a heavy burden, and for succeeding in seeking freedom from it. This story teaches us a powerful lesson about family, courage, and the importance of confronting fears and burdens to seek resolution. Lami's discovery of her mother's secret reveals how silence and misunderstandings can grow into fear and division. By choosing to face the truth and speak openly, Lami showed immense bravery and love for her family. The story also reminds us that burdens, whether personal or inherited, can often be lifted through communication, understanding, and seeking help. Mama Adana's determination to protect her family, even in the face of her own suffering, highlights the resilience and selflessness of a mother's love. Finally, the ritual at the river demonstrates the importance of acknowledging our past while striving for healing and liberation. Thank you for watching my channel. Be sure to explore more captivating and insightful videos here on this channel, where we delve into fascinating and thought-provoking stories. The village of Umia was nestled between rolling green hills and dense forests, a serene place where the rhythms of life were dictated by the rising and setting of the sun. The villagers lived simple lives, tilling the fertile soil, fishing in the nearby river, and weaving colorful cloths. They were a close-knit community, bonded by traditions passed down through generations. Among the villagers, tales of wealth and success in the outside world were rare and often exaggerated. So when Sadiq, a former villager, returned to Umia in grand style, his arrival was nothing short of legendary. His convoy of shiny black cars stirred up clouds of red dust as they rolled into the village. The vehicles gleamed under the sunlight, and the villagers gathered in awe, marveling at the spectacle. Sadiq was not just wealthy, he was extravagantly so. Dressed in the finest fabrics and adorned with gold jewelry, he exuded power and success. His generosity was even more astonishing. Each time he returned, he brought gifts, sacks of rice, bundles of cash, and toys for the children. He lavished the elders with kegs of palm wine and distributed clothing to the women. The villagers worshipped him as though he were a god, believing he had been blessed for his benevolence. What the villagers didn't know was that Sadiq's wealth came at a terrible cost. He was a member of a secretive cult group, a brotherhood that promised riches beyond imagination in exchange for blood sacrifices. Every act of charity he performed was a ritual, a calculated offering to the dark spirits he served. Unseen by the villagers, the gifts he distributed carried a curse. Children who accepted toys or other items from him would fall mysteriously ill and die within days. Yet the villagers, blinded by their gratitude and awe, failed to make the connection. They attributed the deaths to bad luck or ancestral wrath, never suspecting that their beloved benefactor was the source of their sorrow. Among the villagers was a boy named Amir, a curious and observant child with a mind far beyond his years. Amir had begun to notice the pattern of deaths that followed Sadek's visits. Though he was just a boy, he harbored suspicions that few would dare voice. The Yam Festival was a time of joy and abundance in Umia, a celebration that marked the culmination of the villagers' hard work and the blessings of their ancestors. This year's festival, however, was unlike any before it. Sadiq, the wealthiest man ever to emerge from the village, returned during the festivities, and his arrival was nothing short of a spectacle. His convoy of luxurious cars snaked its way into the village, each vehicle glinting under the scorching sun like a treasure from the gods. The villagers gathered in the square, their songs of praise and welcome rising to meet him. Sadiq stepped out of his car, exuding an air of wealth and power. Dressed in richly embroidered robes and adorned with gold jewelry, he looked like a king among men. The festival began with traditional dances, drumming, and offerings to the ancestors. Sadiq sat at the center of it all, surrounded by elders and dignitaries, his face a mask of benevolence. As the day unfolded, he began his well-known ritual of distributing gifts. He handed out sacks of rice, bundles of money, clothing, and toys to the villagers, each gift received with gratitude and adoration. But beneath the surface of this apparent generosity lay a sinister truth. Every item Sadiq distributed was laced with a curse, a dark spell bound to claim the lives of those who accepted them. For the occult brotherhood to which Sadiq belonged, these gifts were offerings to the spirits, a means of maintaining his wealth and power. Unseen by the joyous crowd, a shadow seemed to follow Sadiq, a dark energy that lingered over him. Those who were spiritually attuned could sense it, though they dared not speak of it. Among the crowd was Zainab, the village's spiritual guide, who watched Sadiq with wary eyes. She had long suspected that his wealth was not of natural origin, and the deaths of children following his visits only deepened her doubts. As the festival drew to a close, the villagers dispersed with their gifts, their hearts full of joy. Sadiq left the village with the same grandeur as his arrival. But the celebrations were soon overshadowed by tragedy. Within days, several children fell mysteriously ill. Among them was Tayo, a bright and lively boy who had received a carved wooden horse from Sadiq. His parents tried every remedy they knew, but his condition worsened rapidly. By the third day, Tayo was gone, leaving his family devastated. The villagers mourned the loss, attributing it to bad luck or ancestral displeasure. But Zainab knew better. She began to quietly investigate, piecing together the pattern of deaths that followed Sadiq's visits. Her suspicions grew stronger as she resolved to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The days after the Yam festival were filled with a peculiar unease in Umia. The villagers, unaware of the hidden darkness behind Sadiq's generosity, carried on with their lives, cherishing the gifts they had received. Children played with the toys. Women cooked meals using the provisions, and families proudly displayed the clothing and ornaments given by the wealthy man. But the joy was short-lived. The first sign of trouble came when a young boy, Malik, who had received a beautifully carved drum, fell mysteriously ill. He was a picture of health during the festival, but within 3 days he became lethargic, his vibrant laughter replaced by a pained silence. His family tried everything: herbs, prayers, and offerings, but nothing worked. By the 5th day, Malik was gone. His death sent ripples of sorrow through the village, but it was not the last. Other children who had received gifts from Sadiq began to exhibit similar symptoms. Each case followed the same pattern: sudden illness, a rapid decline, and death within days. The grief-stricken parents could not understand what was happening, and whispers of a curse began to circulate. Zainab, the village's spiritual guide, watched these events unfold with growing dread. For years, she had harbored suspicions about Sadiq, sensing a darkness around him that no amount of wealth could conceal. His visits always seemed to coincide with mysterious misfortunes, but no one dared to question him. Now, with the deaths piling up, her fears were coming to fruition. Determined to uncover the truth, Zainab began her investigations in earnest. She visited the families of the deceased children, examining the gifts they had received. Each item, though outwardly ordinary, carried an energy that was cold and malevolent. She performed cleansing rituals, but the dark energy lingered, defying her efforts. Late one night, as Zainab meditated in her shrine, she sought guidance from the ancestors. The spirits, restless and agitated, revealed a vision of Sadiq standing in a dark forest. surrounded by shadowy figures. In his hands he held a blood-soaked chalice, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The vision confirmed what she had long suspected. Sadiq's wealth was rooted in blood rituals, and the gifts he distributed